Together we banish the ignorance of old night.
Let the galaxy burn. 4 words that sparked a cataclysm, but who uttered them? The answer lies in the tales of 10 space marines who forever changed the Imperium. These transhuman warriors pushed the limits of loyalty, power, and sanity. From unbreakable oaths to heart-wrenching betrayals, each story carries the weight of worlds. What drives a hero to become a villain? How thin is the line between duty and madness? Join us as we count down the most shocking and influential Astartes in Warhammer 40k lore. Prepare for a journey through the darkest corners of humanity's future, where even demigods can fall. Let's turn our attention to the epitome of betrayal in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. Horus Lupercal, the War Master, the Emperor's favorite son, and the shining example of what a Primarch should be. Horus stood as the most beloved figure in the Imperium, a brilliant and charismatic leader who seemed destined to guide humanity to a glorious future. But fate had other plans. Picture Horus, standing tall and proud, his armor gleaming as he led the Luna Wolves to victory after victory. As the Emperor's most trusted general, he commanded the entire Great Crusade, wielding unimaginable power and responsibility. Yet even the mightiest can fall prey to the corrupting influence of chaos. For Horus, it began subtly. A doubt here, a moment of resentment there. The War Master started to question his father's grand plan for humanity. Was the Emperor truly working for the good of all, or did he harbor darker motives? As corruption took root, Horus found himself locked in a desperate internal struggle. Loyalty to his father and everything he'd fought for clashed violently with the promises of power and freedom offered by the Chaos Gods. This battle within would shape the fate of the galaxy. The pivotal moment arrived on the moon of Davin. Wounded and vulnerable, Horus lay in a fever dream, assaulted by visions of a future where the Emperor was worshipped as a god. The air felt thick and oppressive, mirroring the turmoil in Horus's mind. In this moment of weakness and despair, Horus made his fateful choice. He embraced chaos, believing it was the only way to save humanity from a grim future. With Horus's fall, the dominoes of betrayal began to topple. The War Master turned his considerable talents to corruption, slowly poisoning the minds of his brother Primarchs and their legions. What started as one man's decision snowballed into a galactic civil war that would tear the Imperium apart. Let's turn our attention to Lorgar Aurelian, the Dark Prophet, whose crisis of faith would set the galaxy ablaze. Once the most devout son of the Emperor, Lorgar's fall is a tale of tragic transformation. Raised on Colchis, a world steeped in religious fervor, Lorgar saw the Emperor as the divine being he'd always dreamed of serving. He conquered worlds with charisma and conviction, spreading the word of the Emperor's divinity with unmatched zeal. But the Emperor had other plans. He wanted a secular empire built on reason and science, not worship. In a moment that would change galactic history, the Emperor ordered the destruction of Monarchia, Lorgar's perfect city dedicated to his worship. The devastation was total. Lorgar's faith, once unshakable, crumbled like the rubble of his beloved city. He fell to his knees, weeping and screaming at the sky. His perfect world shattered beyond repair. But Lorgar couldn't live without something to believe in. He needed answers, and he was willing to go to extreme lengths to find them. This desperation led Lorgar on a pilgrimage into the Eye of Terror itself. Picture a swirling abyss of chaos and despair, where reality itself breaks down and most mortals never return. It's hard to overstate how insane this decision was, but Lorgar was determined to find the truth, no matter the cost. What Lorgar discovered in the Eye of Terror would change everything. He encountered beings of immense power, the Chaos Gods themselves. They offered him what the Emperor never could: validation, purpose, and the promise of true divinity. Lorgar, his faith rekindled by these dark entities, returned with a new mission: to spread the word of chaos throughout the galaxy and become the architect of the Horus Heresy. While Lorgar's descent into darkness was a deliberate choice, the fall of Magnus the Red was a tragedy born of the noblest intentions. Let's turn our attention to the Crimson King, the most powerful psyker among the Emperor's sons, whose mastery over the warp would become his undoing. Magnus, Primarch of the Thousand Suns, stood apart from his brothers in his psychic might. His cyclopean eye and crimson skin made him a striking figure, but it was his mind that truly set him apart. The Emperor saw Magnus as the key to humanity's psychic evolution, but Magnus's powers would soon put him at odds with the very fabric of the Imperium. When he discovered Horus's betrayal through his psychic abilities, Magnus knew he had to act. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and only he could warn the Emperor in time. Driven by desperation, Magnus made a fateful decision. He gathered his psychic might and hurled his consciousness across the galaxy, straight to Terra itself. But the Emperor had placed powerful psychic wards around the Imperial Palace, barriers meant to protect against the very forces Magnus now wielded. Picture it, the most powerful psyker in the Imperium, fueled by righteousness, crashing against Terra's psychic defenses. The wards buckled and shattered under Magnus's onslaught, creating a breach in reality itself. As the barriers fell, Magnus realized the magnitude of his mistake. The consequences were immediate and devastating. Warp entities poured through the breach, invading the Emperor's most sacred sanctum. In a single act meant to save the Imperium, Magnus had violated its greatest laws and endangered Terra itself. The Emperor's reaction was swift and merciless. He dispatched Lemon Russ and his Space Wolves to bring Magnus to justice, setting in motion a chain of events that would lead to the destruction of Prospero, the homeworld of the Thousand Suns. While the fall of Magnus was a tragedy, some betrayals cut even deeper. What if the most noble sacrifice in the Imperium's history came not from loyalty, but from the confrontation between brothers? Let's turn our attention to a duel that would shake the very foundations of humanity's future. Sanguinius, Primarch of the Blood Angel, embodied the Imperium's ideals with his angelic wings and golden armor. He stood as a beacon of hope during the darkest hour of the Horus Heresy. But even this noble angel harbored a terrible secret. He had foreseen his own death at the hands of Horus. Can you imagine the weight of that knowledge? To know that your end is coming, yet to stand firm in the face of certain doom. The final confrontation between Sanguinius and Horus was a clash of mythic proportion. Picture it, two demigods, once brothers in arms, now locked in mortal combat aboard Horus's flagship, the Vengeful Spirit. The air crackled with psychic energy as Sanguinius's wings unfurled, his face a mask of determination and sorrow. Horus, corrupted by chaos, was a nightmarish vision of his former self. His armor pulsed with demonic energy, his eyes burning with malevolent fire. The two warriors circled each other, their weapons clashing with thunderous force. Each blow exchanged carried the weight of betrayal and shattered dreams. This battle wasn't just a test of strength, but a collision of ideals. Sanguinius fought for loyalty, for the dream of a united humanity. Horus, twisted by the powers of chaos, sought to tear down everything they had once built together. As the duel reached its climax, Sanguinius knew he couldn't win, but in that moment, faced with certain death, he made a choice that would echo through millennia. With a burst of superhuman strength, he struck at Horus, leaving a chink in the War Master's armor, both physical and psychological. Let's talk about a Primarch who truly embodied the darkness of the 41st millennium. Conrad Kurze, also known as the Night Haunter, was a living nightmare who pushed the boundaries of justice to their breaking point. But how does a child of the Emperor become the very thing he was created to fight against? Imagine growing up on a world where the sun never rises, where crime and corruption run rampant in the endless night. This was Nostromo, the homeworld of Conrad Kurze. From the moment he arrived, Kurze took it upon himself to be judge, jury, and executioner. His methods were brutal, but effective. Within a year, crime on Nostromo had all but vanished, but at a terrible cost to Kurze's psyche. His soul, like his world, was drowning in perpetual night. As he reunited with the Emperor and took command of the Night Lord's Legion, Kurze's sense of justice became a double-edged sword. His tactics grew increasingly extreme, driven by prophetic visions of a dark future where the Imperium would become a twisted mockery of the Emperor's dream. These glimpses haunted him, pushing him further into paranoia and madness. When the Horus Heresy unfolded, Kurze's atrocities reached new height. The Night Lords no longer fought for justice, but reveled in terror and pain. Whole worlds were left as corpse-strewn wasteland, their population subjected to psychological warfare that would make even the most hardened Imperial commanders blanch. Kurze believed his actions were necessary to prevent an even worse fate for humanity. This internal conflict tore at him, a battle between his role as protector and his nature as a monster. He became a figure of legend, a boogeyman used to scare children into obedience. But even as he descended into darkness, a part of Kurze still clung to his warped sense of justice. He allowed himself to be assassinated, seeing it as vindication of his beliefs. In his final moments, did he find peace, or was it just another act in his grand performance of terror? From the brutal clarity of Kurze's terror, we plunge into a fog of war so thick even the Emperor himself might lose his way. Enter the Alpha Legion, a force so secretive and cunning that their very existence is shrouded in myth. Their betrayal? A riddle wrapped in an enigma, sealed with a lie. At the heart of this mystery are the twin Primarchs, Alpharius and Omegon. Yes, twins, a deviation from the norm that sets the stage for one of the most confounding betrayals in the Imperium's history. These master manipulators operate in the shadows, weaving webs of deception so intricate that even their own members aren't sure where the truth ends and the lies begin. The Alpha Legion's symbol, the Hydra, perfectly embodies their nature, like a Hydra whose heads multiply with every revelation of deceit. Their identities are fluid, and every revealed secret only spawns more questions. Alpharius and Omegon took this to the extreme, frequently swapping places and identities. They were so alike, even their own legion couldn't tell them apart. But here's where things get really interesting. The Alpha Legion's betrayal during the Horus Heresy isn't as clear-cut as you might think. There are conflicting accounts of their loyalties, with some suggesting they sided with Horus, while others hint at a deeper, more complex game. Could their apparent betrayal actually be an act of ultimate loyalty to the Emperor? Imagine a legion so dedicated to the Emperor's vision that they're willing to be seen as traitors, infiltrating the enemy's ranks to undermine them from within. It's a level of strategy that would make even the most cunning tactician's head spin. The Alpha Legion operates on the principle that the end justifies the means, no matter how dark or twisted those means might be. This leaves us with a paradox. In a war where information is as deadly as any weapon, how can we trust anyone? The Alpha Legion's actions force us to question the very nature of loyalty and betrayal, blurring the lines between friend and foe. From the shadows of manipulation, we now step into the blinding light of uncontrolled fury. Imagine a warrior so consumed by rage that even his superhuman body can barely contain it. This is Angron, the Red Angel, whose betrayal was etched in scars long before the heresy began. But was his fall inevitable, or could the Emperor have prevented it? Angron's origins are the stuff of nightmares. A young Primarch crash-landed on a world of gladiatorial combat, where he was enslaved and implanted with the Butcher's nails. These neural implants turned his brain into a cauldron of boiling rage, suppressing all other emotions. Every moment was agony, his skull feeling like it was being split open by white-hot blades of fury. The Emperor's arrival should have been Angron's salvation, but it only deepened his wounds. Imagine fighting alongside your brothers and sisters for years, forming unbreakable bonds, only to have your supposed savior leave them to die. Angron's resentment towards the Emperor burned hotter than a plasma reactor, a festering wound that would never heal. This resentment spread like a virus to his entire legion. The Warhounds transformed into the World Eaters under Angron's leadership, and it wasn't a pretty sight. Angron had his sons implanted with their own versions of the Butcher's nails, turning an entire legion into berserkers who lived only for the thrill of combat and the spilling of blood. As the heresy approached, Angron's pain, rage, and sense of betrayal built up like a powder keg. His fall wasn't just likely, it was inevitable. The spark of rebellion would ignite a firestorm of violence that would consume entire worlds, fueled by the uncontrollable fury of a Primarch who had known nothing but pain and betrayal his entire life. From the inferno of Angron's rage, we turn to a labyrinth of loyalty that will challenge everything you thought you knew about duty and brotherhood. The Lion, L. Johnson, stands as a paragon of martial prowess, his very name synonymous with unwavering devotion to the Emperor. But what happens when that loyalty becomes a double-edged sword? Let's dive into the enigma that is Lion L. Johnson. As the Primarch of the Dark Angels, he was renowned for his tactical genius and his legion's unbreakable discipline. But beneath this polished exterior, a storm was brewing. The Dark Angels, once the pinnacle of Imperial might, began to shroud themselves in secrecy and paranoia, as if the shadows of their homeworld, Caliban, had followed them across the stars. During the heresy, the Lion's actions became increasingly ambiguous. While other Primarchs chose sides, L. Johnson played a dangerous game with the fate of the galaxy. He isolated his legion, refusing calls for aid and launching his own campaigns without explanation. Was this the calculated move of a master strategist, or the first cracks in a facade of loyalty? Consider his decision to withhold crucial information from fellow loyalists, or his hoarding of powerful artifacts. These choices served no clear purpose, raising questions about his true allegiances. Meanwhile, back on Caliban, Luther, the Lion's closest friend and mentor, began to feel the sting of resentment left behind to govern their homeworld. Luther's loyalty to the Imperium wavered. As the heresy raged on, the the tension built to a breaking point. When the Lion finally returned to Caliban, he found not a welcome, but a world in rebellion. The confrontation between L. Johnson and Luther would shake the very foundations of their planet. In the aftermath, Caliban itself would be reduced to asteroid fields, and the Dark Angels would be forever changed, their legacy marked by secrecy and internal conflict. From the ashes of betrayal, we turn to the unshakable pillar of loyalty that stood firm against the coming storm. Let's talk about Rogal Dorn, the Emperor's Praetorian and the man who would become the shield of Terra itself. Rogal Dorn was known for his unwavering discipline and mastery of defensive warfare. As the Primarch of the Imperial Fists, he had overseen the construction of mighty fortresses across the galaxy, but nothing could have prepared him for the task that lay ahead. When word of Horus's betrayal reached Terra, Dorn was the first to hear it. Can you imagine the shock, the disbelief? This was Horus, the War Master, the Emperor's favorite son. For a moment, even Dorn's legendary composure faltered, but as the initial wave of emotion subsided, his iron will reasserted itself. With the fate of the Imperium hanging in the balance, Dorn threw himself into the monumental task of fortifying Terra. Every wall, bunker, and weapons emplacement had to be perfect. The entire planet became a fortress under his guidance, a bastion against the coming darkness. As Dorn worked tirelessly, he grappled with the knowledge that each reinforced position might one day be tested by the weapons of his own brothers. Every strategic decision was a reminder of the bonds that had been shattered, yet his resolve only grew stronger. The siege of Terra loomed, a crucible in which humanity's fate would be decided. Dorn stood ready, a golden sentinel against the tide of betrayal. As the forces of chaos drew near, the weight of his responsibility pressed down upon him like never before. In the aftermath of the final battle, Dorn made the grimmest discovery of all. Picture this, the mighty Praetorian who had stood firm against impossible odds, now faced with the broken body of the Emperor himself. The sight of his father's shattered form, the smell of ozone and blood, the deathly silence of the throne room. It's a moment that would haunt Dorn forever, a stark reminder of the true cost of unwavering loyalty. Let's talk about Vulkan, the Primarch of the Salamanders, whose story is unlike any other in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium. Imagine a warrior so resilient that even death itself couldn't keep him down. That's Vulkan for you, a being gifted, or cursed, with the ability to regenerate and come back to life no matter how many times he's killed. But this power caught the attention of Conrad Kurze, the Night Haunter. Kurze, in his twisted curiosity, decided to test the limits of Vulkan's regenerative powers. What followed was a nightmarish ordeal that would break the spirit of any ordinary being. Picture Vulkan chained in a dark, damp dungeon, his body broken and reformed countless times. The air thick with the stench of blood and decay, his own screams echoing off the walls as Kurze found new ways to end his life. With each resurrection, Vulkan opened his eyes to the same hellish scene. His muscles burned, bones cracked, and skin knitted itself back together, but the physical pain paled in comparison to the mental anguish. Each time he returned, a part of him longed to give in to rage, to become the monster Kurze wanted him to be. Yet Vulkan's true strength lay not in his body, but in his spirit. Even as his flesh was torn asunder time and time again, he clung to his humanity. He held onto memories of Nocturne, of his sons, of the people he swore to protect. It became his anchor in an endless sea of torment. The ordeal left its mark, scarring even a Primarch's mind. But Vulkan's unwavering spirit and dedication to humanity became a beacon of hope in the darkest days of the Horus Heresy. His story reminds us that true strength comes from holding on to one's principles, even in the face of unimaginable horror. The betrayals and sacrifices of the Primarchs have scarred the grim darkness of the 41st millennium. These demigods, once united, now stand as stark reminders of loyalty's fragility. Their choices echo through time, shaping the Imperium and beyond. Space Marine chapters still grapple with their Gene Father's decisions, seeking redemption or embracing darkness. Worlds lie in ruin, and reality itself bears the scars of their actions. In this universe of eternal war, where does true loyalty lie? Is it in unwavering devotion to a silent emperor, or in forging one's own path, even into damnation? The Primarch's legacies challenge us to question the very foundations of faith and duty. What's your take on loyalty in the grim darkness of the far future? Share your thoughts below.